Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to do a deep dive into a topic that I know a lot of you are interested in,
Yeah.
money and investing.
Yeah, we went through a ton of books, over 40 of them actually, on this subject.
We read everything from classics like Rich Dad, Poor Dad to newer ones like The Millionaire Fastlane
Our mission is to condense all that knowledge.
into some clear takeaways that you can actually use.
Yeah, we're going to bust some myths along the way too, hopefully.
Okay, so let's get started. Let's build a foundation first. Rich Dad, Poor Dad is one of those books that almost everybody who is interested in personal finance has read. At least I hope they have.
Right, right. It's considered like one of the classics.
What is it about that book that makes it so important? What's the big takeaway there?
Well, it's funny because the book's called Rich Dad, Poor Dad, but it really boils down to this concept of assets versus liabilities.
Mhm.
And it's not always so obvious which is which.
Yeah, give us an example of that.
Okay, so everybody thinks, like, oh, if I own a house, that's an asset, right? But is it really always an asset? What if you have a huge mortgage? That's a liability. You're paying money out every single month.
So an asset then is something that is putting money in your pocket.
Exactly. So if you were to rent that house out and it was bringing in more income than you were paying out in expenses, well then, yeah, that's an asset.
It's working for you.
It's working for you.
Rich Dad, Poor Dad also introduces the idea of the cash flow quadrant.
Right.
And that kind of gets to the different ways that you can earn money.
Yeah, it's kind of a way of looking at, where your income is coming from and how secure it might be.
So break down the cash flow quadrant. Let's go through each of those four different quadrants.
So you've got E, S, B, and I. You got the employee, the self-employed, the business owner, and the investor.
So an employee is pretty straightforward. You're working for somebody else and you get a paycheck.
Right. Trading your time for money.
Self-employed, you're kind of like your own boss in a lot of ways. You're maybe a consultant or a freelancer.
Right, like an independent contractor.
A business owner, that's somebody who's built something that generates income.
Yeah.
And that could be a small business, could be a big company.
Yeah, or even a system like online courses or a website that brings in money passively.
Okay. And then you've got an investor who's putting their money to work for them.
Exactly. So again, the quadrant isn't saying one is better than the other,
Sure.
but it really helps you think about, where you are and where you might want to be and what the trade-offs are.
It challenges you to think a little bit outside that traditional 9-to-5 job.
Right. And that's something that's really highlighted in another book that we read, The 4-Hour Workweek.
Okay, so tell me about the 4-hour workweek. I think this book is a bit controversial, but it also had a big impact on a lot of people.
Yeah, it definitely shook things up. I think the big takeaway from that one is this idea that you don't have to be stuck in that rat race working until you're 65 to retire. There are other ways to create income, to build a lifestyle business.
You can design a life.
Yeah, design a life you enjoy.
And it's not about being lazy.
No, not at all. It's really about working smarter, not harder, and figuring out how to leverage your time and resources.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. What are some of the key ways to work smarter, not harder, according to the 4-hour work week? What are some of the things that you can do?
Okay, so one big one is automation. Figuring out, one of the tasks you do every day that you could automate.
Can you give me an example?
Sure. So like responding to emails. A lot of people spend, hours and hours every week just answering emails. What if you could create templates or hire a virtual assistant to filter through those?
Source or
Exactly. And then you can focus on the things that actually move the needle in your business or your life. Another big thing is passive income.
Okay, so what's an example of passive income?
Creating online courses, writing an ebook, building a website that generates advertising revenue. All these things can bring in money even when you're not actively working.
So these are the ways you can kind of escape the 9-to-5.
Exactly. And then you have more time for the things you actually enjoy.
All right, so we've got the foundation now. We understand assets versus liabilities. We've got this idea of the cash flow quadrant. We're thinking about working smarter, not harder. But here's the thing. All the financial knowledge in the world won't do you any good if you don't have the right mindset.
Totally agree. Mindset is huge. And that's where a book like Millionaire Fastlane comes in.
The Millionaire Fastlane. What did you think of that book?
I mean, it's pretty blunt. It doesn't sugarcoat anything.
Yeah.
But I think that's why it's so effective, because it really challenges you to think differently about wealth.
It debunks that whole idea that you can get rich quick.
Right. Yeah, it's all about, building wealth through hard work, discipline, and creating value. It talks about these 3 paths to wealth. the sidewalk, the slow lane, and the fast lane.
Okay, let's go through those. The sidewalk, what's that all about?
So the sidewalk, it's all about instant gratification, living paycheck to paycheck, spending everything you earn.
Not really thinking about the future.
Exactly. Then you have the slow lane. This is kind of like the traditional path. Go to school, get a good job, work your way up the ladder, save diligently.
401k.
Yeah, and hope that you'll be able to retire comfortably someday.
Someday.
Yeah. But then there's the fast lane, and that's where things get interesting. It's all about creating a business that solves problems, scales rapidly, and generates significant income.
That's like entrepreneurship on steroids, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's about thinking big, taking calculated risks, and being relentless in your pursuit of success. And, it's not for everyone, but the rewards can be huge.
It can be life-changing.
Life-changing, exactly.
And this kind of ties into another classic book that we read, Think and Grow Rich.
Oh, yeah. That's a powerful one.
What are your thoughts on Think and Grow Rich?
Mm.
Because I know that one is also a bit controversial.
It is. It can be a bit abstract, and some people find it a bit too woo-woo.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot of truth to it, too. It really emphasizes the power of mindset and how your beliefs can shape your reality.
So it's not just about having the right knowledge and the right skills.
It's about believing in yourself.
Believing you can achieve it.
Exactly. And visualizing your success and setting clear goals.
It's like that old saying, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
Exactly. You have to believe it first.
Now, this kind of leads us to another book that I thought was really interesting, and that was The Psychology of Money.
Oh, yeah. That one's really insightful.
Because it's not just about, like, the numbers and the strategies. It's about the psychology behind our financial decisions.
Right. It shows how our emotions, our biases, our past experiences with money can all influence the choices we make.
We're not always as rational as we think we are.
Definitely not. I think one of the biggest takeaways for me from that book was the idea that we often misattribute luck to success. We look at somebody who's wealthy and we think, oh, they just got lucky. But there's often a lot more to it than that.
There's a lot of hard work and discipline and smart decision-making that went into it.
Exactly. And we shouldn't discount those things. And on the flip side, sometimes we make bad decisions and we blame it on bad luck, but really it might be our own biases or emotions getting in the way.
So the psychology of money really emphasizes the importance of being aware of our own biases and our own kind of mental blocks when it comes to money.
Yeah, and trying to make decisions based on logic and long-term thinking rather than letting our emotions drive the wheel.
Absolutely. All right, so we've talked about the importance of mindset, of understanding our own psychology, but what about the actual nuts and bolts of investing? Where do people even begin with that?
Yeah, there's so much to learn, and it can feel overwhelming. I think one of the first things to recognize is this idea of what Alex Hormozy calls ignorance debt. We often jump into things without really understanding them, and that can cost us a lot of money.
You make decisions without having the full picture.
Exactly. So I think the first step is really just acknowledging that there's always more to learn and being willing to put in the time to educate yourself.
So where should people start? Are there any particular books that you would recommend for people who are just starting out with investing?
Well, we talked about the intelligent investor earlier. That's considered kind of the Bible of value investing. It can be a bit dense, but it's a really great foundation.
Warren Buffett recommends it.
He does. He credits that book with shaping his investment philosophy.
So that's the intelligent investor.
Yeah.
What about for someone who's maybe a little bit intimidated by the whole world of investing?
Yeah, well, there's a great book called Girls That Invest.
I like that title.
Yeah, and it's really for anyone, not just women, but it breaks down investing in a way that's very clear and accessible.
What are some of the key takeaways from that book?
Well, it emphasizes the importance of understanding basic financial principles. Things like budgeting, saving, debt management.
The basics.
The basics, exactly. And then it goes into different investment options.
Okay.
Like stocks, bonds, mutual funds, and it helps you create a plan that's aligned with your own personal goals and risk tolerance.
So it's not just about following somebody else's advice blindly.
Right. It's about understanding what works for you.
Okay, so we've got a couple of books to get us started. What about some actual investment strategies or specific types of investments that people might want to look into?
Well, one of the most commonly recommended strategies, especially for beginners, is index fund investing.
Index funds. Tell me more about those.
So an index fund is basically a type of mutual fund that tracks a specific market index, like the S&P 500. So instead of trying to pick individual stocks, you're basically buying a basket of stocks that represents the overall market.
Okay, so it's like diversifying automatically.
Exactly. And there's a great book that really advocates for this approach called The Little Book of Common Sense Investing by John Bogle.
Okay. John Bogle, the founder of Vanguard.
Exactly. He's considered kind of the godfather of index fund investing.
And why are index funds so often recommended for beginners?
Well, for a couple of reasons. They're very low cost
Okay,
because they're not actively managed.
gotcha.
They're very diversified, so you're spreading your risk. And historically, they've performed very well.
That sounds like a good starting point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a get-rich-quick scheme, but it's a solid, long-term investment strategy.
Okay. Now, there are other approaches to investing too, right? What about some of the folks who advocate for investing in what you know?
Right. So there are a couple of books that we read that touch on this. The Don Ho Investor and One Up on Wall Street. And the idea here is that you have an advantage as an investor if you're investing in businesses that you understand, that you use in your everyday life.
Because you have insider knowledge in a way.
Yeah, you have a better sense of whether the business is doing well, whether it's likely to grow, and you can spot opportunities that other investors might miss.
So you're not just looking at numbers on a spreadsheet.
Right. You're using your own experience and knowledge to make informed decisions. There's a great anecdote in One Up on Wall Street about the guy who invested in Invisalign.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about that one.
So he was a dentist, and he saw firsthand how popular Invisalign was becoming, how many patients were choosing it over traditional braces.
Oh, well.
So he invested in the company, and it turned out to be a huge winner.
That's awesome.
But, it's important to note that even with this approach, it's not just about, blindly buying stock in companies you like.
You still have to do your research.
You still have to do your research, understand the financials, the industry, the competition.
Yeah. Make sure it makes sense. Don't let your emotions cloud your judgment just because it's a product that you like.
Right.
So we've talked about index fund investing, investing in what you know. But here's something that I think a lot of money books don't talk about enough, and that is investing in yourself.
Ah, yes. That's crucial.
And I think that's something that we saw emphasized in a few of the books we read.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, the best investment you can make is in yourself.
So what does that look like?
It can take many forms. It could be investing in your education, taking courses, learning new skills.
Getting a degree.
Yeah. It could be attending conferences, networking with people in your field.
Mentorship.
Mentorship, exactly. It could even be starting a side hustle, something that allows you to learn and grow and potentially generate some extra income.
Build new skills.
Exactly, because when you invest in yourself, you're increasing your earning potential. You're making yourself more valuable, more marketable.
It's like that old saying, give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish, you feed him for a lifetime.
Exactly. And that's what investing in yourself is all about.
Absolutely. So we've covered a lot of ground here, and I think we've given our listeners a lot to think about, but we're just getting started. In the next part, we're going to dive even deeper into some specific strategies and tactics for managing your money, paying off debt, investing wisely. So stay tuned.
Yeah, we'll be back with more practical tips and actionable advice to help you on your journey to financial freedom.
Welcome back to our deep dive into money and investing.
So last time we talked about kind of the big picture stuff, understanding what assets and liabilities are, figuring out where you fall in that cash flow quadrant, and why mindset is so important.
Right. But now I think we got to get into the practical stuff. How do we actually, put all this into action? Yeah, give us the nitty-gritty, the actual steps people can take. Where do we even start?
Okay, so one of the simplest but most important things is tracking your expenses. Seriously, you got to know where your money is going.
Yeah, I'll admit, I'm not always great at this. It feels kind of tedious sometimes.
It can be, but it's like, trying to build a house without a blueprint. If you don't know where your money's going, you can't make a plan to get it where you want it to be.
Fair enough. So how do you recommend people track their expenses? Are there any particular tools or methods you like?
I mean, there are so many options these days. You've got budgeting apps, spreadsheets, even just a good old-fashioned notebook. I think the key is finding a system that works for you and sticking with it.
So just be consistent.
Yeah, and once you actually see, where your money is going, you might be surprised. It's those little things, those daily lattes, those subscriptions you forgot you had. they add up.
Oh, yeah, I could definitely see that. I think we all have those little money leaks we don't even realize.
Exactly. And once you identify those, then you can start to, cut back or be more intentional with your spending, which frees up more money to put towards your goals.
Right, whether it's paying off debt or saving for retirement or investing.
Exactly. Speaking of debt, that's another area where the books had a lot to say.
Yeah, debt feels like this big, scary monster for a lot of people.
It is for a lot of people. And it can feel really overwhelming, but, all the experts agree you got to tackle it. Most recommend starting with the high interest debt first.
Like credit cards.
Yeah, those interest charges can really get out of control.
You're just throwing money away at that point.
Pretty much. There are different strategies you can use, like the snowball method, where you pay off the smallest debts first to build momentum, or the avalanche method, where you focus on the ones with the highest interest rates.
So it's about having a plan and chipping away at it systematically.
Right. And once you've got that debt under control, then you can start thinking about building a solid emergency fund.
Yeah, that's important. Life happens.
It does. Unexpected expenses come up, and you don't want to end up back in debt just because your car broke down or you had a medical bill.
So having that cushion, that safety net, is crucial.
Exactly. It gives you peace of mind.
Okay, so we've talked about managing money, but now let's talk about growing it. Investing, right? That's where things get really interesting.
Yeah, and it's where a lot of people feel lost, I think.
I can see why. I mean, there's so many different options. Stocks, bonds, mutual funds, real estate. It can be confusing, even intimidating for some people.
For sure. And remember all that talk about ignorance debt. Investing is definitely an area where you don't want to be in the dark.
Yeah, you want to make informed decisions.
Exactly. So I think, reading those books we mentioned earlier, The Intelligent Investor, Girls That Invest, that's a great place to start. They'll give you that solid foundation.
But then, once you have the knowledge, how do you actually go about investing?
Well, one of the most common pieces of advice we saw was to diversify.
Don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Exactly. So you want to spread your investments across different asset classes, stocks, bonds, real estate, maybe even some alternative investments like precious metals.
So it's about building a balanced portfolio.
Right. And it might shift over time, as you get more comfortable with investing, as your financial situation changes.
It's not a one and done thing.
Nope, it's a process.
Yeah.
And it's not just about the numbers either.
Oh, yeah. Tell me more.
Well, I think, a lot of the books we read, especially The Psychology of Money, really emphasize the importance of developing a healthy relationship with money.
Okay, what does a healthy relationship with money look like?
It means, not being stressed about it all the time, not comparing yourself to others.
Right, it's about having a positive mindset.
Yeah, and understanding that money is a tool. It's a tool that can help you achieve your goals and live a fulfilling life, but it shouldn't control you.
It's not about the money itself, it's about what it allows you to do.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that, financial success is a journey, not a destination. There will be ups and downs. You'll make mistakes.
And that's okay.
It is. The key is to, learn from those mistakes, adjust your course, and keep moving forward. And celebrate your wins along the way.
Yeah, celebrate the small victories.
Absolutely, because those small victories can really add up over time.
All right, so we talked about managing money, tackling debt, investing wisely, and even cultivating a healthy relationship with money. What's next? What are we going to dive into in the final part of this deep dive?
Well, we're going to zoom out again, look at the big picture, and talk about some of the overarching lessons we learned from these 40 books, the stuff that can really have a lasting impact.
We're back for the final part of our deep dive. We've gone through so many practical tips and strategies for managing money and investing, and now I think it's time to step back and look at the bigger picture.
Yeah, after reading all these books, certain themes just kept coming up again and again.
So what were some of those big overarching lessons that really stuck with you?
Well, one of the most powerful ones was the importance of defining what wealth actually means to you. Like, what does it really mean to be wealthy?
Because I think it's easy to get caught up in that chase for more, bigger numbers, fancier stuff, without really thinking about what we're actually chasing.
Exactly. And so many of these books, they emphasized that true wealth, it goes way beyond just your net worth.
It's not just about how much money you have in the bank.
Right. It's about having the freedom to design a life that you actually enjoy, a life that aligns with your values.
Yeah, it's about having options. It's about having control over your time and your resources.
Exactly. So maybe wealth to you means having more time to spend with your family or pursuing a passion or traveling the world. It's about having that flexibility to do what you want when you want.
So it's really about defining what's important to you and then building your financial life around that.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a big one. Defining wealth on your own terms. What else? What were some other big themes that emerged?
Well, another one that really resonated with me was the importance of long-term thinking. This came up especially in the books on investing.
Yeah, because building wealth, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon.
Right, exactly. It's about making those consistent, disciplined choices over time, even when you don't see those immediate results.
It's about delaying gratification, resisting that temptation to try to get rich quick.
Yeah, because those schemes, they rarely ever pan out in the long run.
It's about playing the long game, trusting the process, knowing that the small actions that you take today can make a huge difference 10, 20, 30 years down the road.
Absolutely. And speaking of small actions leading to big results, that brings us to another crucial concept, the power of compounding.
Yes. Compounding. Einstein called it the eighth wonder of the world.
I mean, it's pretty magical. It's the idea that, even small amounts of money, if you invest them consistently over time, they can grow exponentially.
It's like that snowball rolling downhill, gathering more and more snow as it goes.
Exactly. And the earlier you start, the more time that snowball has to roll, and the more impressive those results will be down the line.
Yeah, it's amazing how much of a difference those early years of investing can make.
Huge difference.
So even if you can only invest a small amount right now, just starting is the most important thing.
Absolutely. Consistency is key.
And thinking about the long term, it also means thinking about retirement, which, let's be honest, can feel like a lifetime away when you're younger.
Yeah, it's easy to put it off. I'll worry about that later.
But the experts all agree the sooner you start planning for retirement, the better off you'll be.
Absolutely. And it's not just about saving enough money, it's about creating a vision for what you actually want that retirement to look like.
So it's like, what are your passions? What are your goals? What do you want to be doing with your time? It's about designing a life that you're excited about, even after you stop working.
Exactly. Because retirement doesn't have to mean just sitting on a beach doing nothing. It can be a time for pursuing new interests, for traveling, for spending time with loved ones, for giving back to your community.
It can be the most fulfilling time of your life.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We talked about defining wealth on your own terms, thinking long-term, embracing the power of compounding, preparing for a fulfilling retirement. Any final thoughts before we wrap things up?
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway from all these books is that financial well-being, it's a journey, not a destination.
It's not about reaching some arbitrary number. It's about making conscious choices every day, choices that align with your values and help you create a life that feels abundant and meaningful.
Absolutely. And it's okay to experiment. It's okay to make mistakes. You're going to learn and adjust along the way.
There's no one right way to do this.
Yeah.
Everyone's journey is unique.
Exactly.
Well, this has been an amazing deep dive. I feel like I've learned so much, and I hope our listeners have too.
Yeah, me too. And remember, the books and ideas we talked about today, they're just the starting point. Keep exploring, keep learning. There's so much knowledge out there.
Keep diving deep.
Exactly.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. We'll see you next time for another deep dive into a fascinating topic.